we use the term opportunity as a way of diagnosing larger social and economic patterns. That's an error. In psychological terms, it's called an attribution error, right? You take this real thing, a set of circumstances. Has anybody ever had an opportunity? Raise your hand. Ever? Raise your hand. Let me say this way. Raise your hand if you've ever had a set of circumstances that gave you a chance to do something. Me too. How many of you have ever missed an opportunity? Me too. It's about stuff that happens, real stuff that happens. This picture is a picture that represents growing income equality from 1979 to about 2010. The picture gets worse. You'll hear this over the weekend and before. There were lots of reports of the growing income inequality. And noticing that Martin Luther King Jr., in his speeches, especially toward the end, right, before he was killed, wasn't just talking about civil rights in racial terms, but he was talking about economic injustice. And he was using terms that seem familiar today or seem applicable today, like growing income inequality. Like, for example, the 1%, whatever the 1% is. I think I know people who might be in the 1% already. Isn't that funny how the number obscures the real people? In any case, we're on the edge. We're right at the edge of where the top 1% will own more than the 99%. We're not there yet, but we're almost there. We're on the edge. If income inequality keeps going up, and this is just income, not wealth, right? If economic inequality keeps increasing at the rate that it's increasing, the 1% will own more than the rest of the 99%. There's something that feels not right about that. At least to me. And maybe it would feel righter if I was in the 1%. We'll get to that error in a minute. I call that the error of the view from the top. But in the meantime, we look at this. You might not do this, but your politicians will. Your elected officials will. They'll look at this and they'll start talking about this graphic, right? Growing income inequality, stagnation of wages, etc. And they'll start talking about it in terms of opportunity. They'll say that the problem with this is that these people at the bottom don't have opportunity. On the one hand, I go, that seems kind of right. Hey, it does seem kind of like they don't have the same chance. But what it does is it turns this big pattern, it puts the problem of the big pattern in the poor people's lap. It says, if only we gave these poor people the chance. And then it gets even more dangerous when we start talking about this as an outcome of educational opportunity. Because what that really means is that these people down at the bottom, they're poor because they didn't get educated enough. And the people at the top, by implication, the people who are these folks, got where they got because they're better educated. I won't even go into just how that's factually unsubstantiated. You can't. It's not factually true. It's oversimplified at the very least. It may be that the people in the upper 1% have more schooling, but that doesn't necessarily, as a pattern. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the people at the bottom. That doesn't necessarily mean that fact can be used to explain this gap. So, problem number one is we attribute large social and economic patterns to a problem of opportunity, which I think gives us only a very small and limited course of action. It says that the people down here, they just need to have more chances. But in fact, what we need to do is we need to get the people down here the same chances that the people at the top had. It's oversimplified. To test that out, let's just see what that would look like. What would a chance look like for the person down here? What would a chance look like for the person down here at the bottom? Yeah.
A scholarship.
A scholarship. Great. So let's give, right, for a person down here at the bottom, a scholarship feels like an opportunity, does it not? The scholarship feels like an opportunity. Let's go back to the definition. Does a scholarship feel like a circumstance that might make it possible to do something, especially if you have money? Yes? Yes, okay, good. Right, nice. So an opportunity for an individual person down here at the bottom might give them a chance to come up. But let's take the next logical step, because if what we're talking about is larger social patterns, then let's say it this way. All the people at the bottom get scholarships. All of them. And let's just thought experiment. It's never going to happen. But just thought experiment. Let's think it out. All the people at the bottom, if you are in this, if you're below, if your family makes less than, I don't know, let's make this up. If your family makes less than $250,000 a year as a family. Like, these are pretty tightly close, these are clustered together, right? Oh, wait, let's just keep it simple. The people down on the bottom 20%, if you're in the bottom 20% of income, everybody gets a scholarship. What happens to these lines?
They just become closer.
Yeah? What's that? Nothing. We have a nothing, we have a come closer, we have a what? Yeah?
They just would all move up.
They'd all move up. Yeah?
What if they all move down?
Say more. Explain. How do we know? Let's think this through, because if we're going to use the word opportunity, if we're going to critique this, then let's see how it works. Nothing would happen. They all move up is a version of nothing would happen, right? But wait, wouldn't they all move down?
1% move up more.
So maybe the 1% would move up more. What does that mean? Let's take this experiment right here. How many seats are there in this classroom? 250 approximately? But there's only 250, right? If I threw the doors open and said, okay, everybody, anybody who wants to come in, take a seat, what would happen?
More competition.
More competition. What else? What does that mean?
Just not enough seats.
Not enough seats. How would we solve that problem? Anybody?
Sit on the floor.
Sit on the floor. More seats. You could build more seats, right? Anybody else?
More teachers, more programs.
More teachers, more programs, more etc. How long do you think it would take before you started getting a hierarchy of programs and institutions? How long do you think it would take before you had 1,000 people in the class, but there was like the honors section? How long do you think it would take before we developed a test that just kept a few more people out so that we didn't have the crowding problem? How long do you think it would take before the gap started to increase again? My guess is not long. My guess is that the people who feel, and that's us too, the people who feel special because we got in don't like it when the rest of the people come in too, because it makes us feel less special and less important. This pattern has borne itself out historically. Once people get to the top, they want to keep their position at the top. So, my prediction is this. If we were to give everybody at the bottom scholarships, it might work for those people at the bottom, right? They might get some more opportunity. It would certainly work for some of them, but I don't think it would do much toward closing this gap. Because the people at the top already have in their possession largely the means to stay at the top. Call this pessimistic. I don't think people like to share very much. And if you think I'm being pessimistic, let me ask you this. If there was somebody outside this door who really, really wanted to get into this class, really wanted, would you give up your seat? I think most of us wouldn't. Because for all kinds of reasons. Like maybe because we feel like we worked our butts off to get here, we deserve it. Or maybe we think, oh man, this was my one pastime where I got in. I'm not going to lose this chance. Or maybe we think, well, I'm a senior. I need it more. They think they need it, but I really need it. All kinds of reasons why we wouldn't give up our seats. And we might say something like, well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sorry, man. Your chance will come up next time. Kick that opportunity can down the road. We think that this pattern wouldn't reproduce itself. I think we're not being honest about our own, what we would do. Maybe I should just ask you, for real, raise your hand if somebody, one person, really, really wanted to get in this class. Raise your hand if you would say, you really want to? You can have my seat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not enough to change the pattern. Let me ask it a little more broadly. There's somebody who really worked their tail off to go through school and missed the cut to get into UCSB by just a couple of points. They busted their tail, worked just as hard as you. Maybe they just got one less of a grade point, whatever it is. One less of a little score on the SAT or whatever the test is that you took. Or maybe the person who was writing their letter of recommendation just barely missed the deadline, so it didn't get in. Would you give up your seat to make it more even? This isn't about rich people being selfish. This is about all of it. I don't know if it's natural or not, all of our tendency to hold on to the stuff that's in our hands. Treating this pattern of income inequality as a problem of opportunity, as if we just gave the people more opportunity, I think obscures the mechanism behind this. On the one hand, our human tendency to hold on to what we've got. And at the same time, the systemic problems that make this gap increase. The social capital problems. It seems set up to make this happen. And so error number one, I think we misuse the term opportunity as a diagnosis for social and economic patterns we might not like. And the danger in that is that we treat this as an educational problem. As if we could just educate the people down here at the bottom, they'd rise to the top. Or the gap would close. There's absolutely no evidence that that would happen, and the thought experiment, I think, would tell us that it probably wouldn't. The way out of that? So how do we get out of this error? That this one seems the easiest. Every time we want to use the word opportunity to diagnose big social and economic patterns, we just pause for a minute and see if that's really what we mean. Error number two when we talk about opportunity. This is going to seem familiar. Error number two. After error number two, I'm going to open it up for some questions. There'll be a little quiz after this too. Error number two, when we talk about the term opportunity, is that we seem to be blinded in a way. Have you seen the Budweiser Clydesdales? They have those blinders on, right? You know what I'm talking about? Just nod your head so I know that, right? Not the blinders, they put them on. And it's so that the horse doesn't get skittish, like it's only looking ahead and all this stuff going on over on the sides. It's because they're called blinders, right? I think we're blinded by a culture and a society that tends to think about opportunity only in terms of ladders and not in terms of leaves. What does that mean? It means we tend to think of opportunity only in the terms of moving up. This is especially true when we start using opportunity to talk about schooling. When we use the word opportunity to talk about ourselves, we might say, oh, I missed a chance to go, I don't know, go to Cyprus. I was in Europe, and I had missed a chance to go to Cyprus. It would have been awesome. In other words, I missed a chance to take this detour and go do some exploring. Somebody says to you, hey, you know what? You don't know how to surf? Let's go we'll go hang out in the ocean. We'll learn how to surf. And you say, oh man, maybe 5 years down the road, you go, man, I missed my opportunity. I missed my chance to go do something different. For a lot of you, think about your own individual experience in college in these terms, that college is filled with opportunities to try stuff out that you won't have again in your lifetime. By the way, that's a lie. Don't believe the grown-ups who tell you that this is the chance for you to explore. You have a whole lifetime to explore, so let's just not worry about that. But you think often to think about college, this is my time to go get crazy. I can take whatever class I want. I'm going to take a class on jazz and another class on, and those of you who are engineering majors are like, yeah, nice try. But you might think of it as like, your time is not controlled by other people. And for some of you, this is the first time in your lives. College was the first time. Your freshman year was the first time where there wasn't somebody telling you what to do next and what not to do at the same time, right? This is why freshmen get crazy. Because you don't know what to do with this kind of opportunity. The circumstances, which the most defining aspect of which is freedom. The circumstances where somebody's not punishing you for not doing, telling you what to do and punishing you for not doing what they say. Right? So when we think about our own experience, I think we're pretty good at thinking about opportunity in terms of opportunity to go off track. But then this idea comes crashing in. Even then, we worry. Are we missing out on the opportunity to move forward? Over and over again, I hear art and music majors telling me that they go tell their folks that they want to major in art or music or, I don't know, something like that. And their parents say, that sounds great, you better have a backup plan. Anybody have parents who told them that they needed to have a backup plan? Raise your hand if you've been told you needed a backup plan. Right, good. That is, go explore, but you better be sure you can still climb that ladder. That's what backup plan means. But this gets us into this error that we make when we use the word opportunity to talk about anybody but ourselves. We are so bad at thinking about opportunity for other people in any way except a move up. Even when we talk about our own kids, take your kids out. Take your kids out. You have them, your little drawing? Gingerbread kid, take them out. And when we talk about our own kids, the opportunity for our own kids, we do this I think more often than not, we do this funny shift in our heads. We don't think about opportunities for growth that goes outward and exploring. We think when we say we want our kids to have opportunities, I think we mostly start thinking about forward progress. I want my kid to have an opportunity to excel. I want my kid to have an opportunity to get into the gate class. I want my kid to have an opportunity to go to the college of his or her choice. I want my kid to have an opportunity to get picked for the all-star team. I want my kid to have an opportunity, sometimes to take an art class, if that's their passion, and we start getting this touchy-feely language around passion, right? But we want to make sure that if they get an opportunity to explore their passion, that it doesn't come at the cost of an opportunity to... The further we get from our own selves, even when the distance is as short from our own self to a child, the more limited our notion of opportunity gets. And when we start talking about other people's children, and the schools that they send their children to, we are terrible at thinking about and talking about opportunity in any other way but this. So how does that work out? Why is that a problem? Because when we talk about ourselves or our own kids, there's a chance that what we say is, I want my kid, there's a chance that when we talk about ourselves, we want to have an opportunity to both go up and also explore, right? We talk about our kids, we're pretty there's a chance that we're going to say things like, yes, I want my child to have a chance to learn how to read and get in the higher reading group, but it makes me feel uneasy when my child doesn't get to take any art or music or PE. If it comes at the cost of my child exploring his or her creativity, I'm uneasy about it. But when we start talking about what's good for other people's children, for other schools, we forget all the LEAF stuff. We forget all the exploration stuff, and we say what you need is an opportunity to excel. And so how does that translate? It means that the people who have any control over anything, right, the people who are in positions of power, sometimes those people are in this upper 1%, sometimes they're in the upper 20%. They're usually at the top economically. How does that translate? That translates into those people build schools for their children, which are awesome. Oaks Christian School in the Conejo Valley. Will Smith sends his kid there. Didn't learn how to act. That was cheap. Sends his kid there. You know who teaches the guitar class? The ex-guitarist for Pink Floyd. What? I talked to a parent who had their kid there, and it was like, you won't believe this, man. And the baseball coach is like a former professional baseball player. And those kids do well, they do great, but there's all these teams they can be a part of, and art stuff, and guitar, and all kinds of stuff. Because when you're talking about yourself and your own kid, there's a chance that you're going to argue for this. But guess what kind of schools the people in power, and that includes most of us at some point, want to build for poor kids? They want to build schools for poor kids, and they use the language of opportunity that march them right along from one topic to the next, right up the ladder. High standards, high accountability. You got to make sure what page you're on Thursday, that everybody's on the same page because you don't want to fall behind. No Child Left Behind was written for the people, other people's kids. Sure, I don't want my child left behind, but I want my child a lot more than not left behind. But when we start making policies for other people's kids, we impoverish the education that we want for them because we have a tendency to think in terms of ladders and not leaves. The further it gets from us, the worse we get at thinking about opportunity. We get myopic and we get blindered. Why do I feel outraged about this? Why do I think this second error is an important one for us to worry about? Because it's going to be my kid. We've got to get better at this one. When we think about opportunity, we've got to enrich our thinking about opportunity, not just thinking about opportunity to rise up, but opportunity to rise up and move out. And the irony is that in our urgent and real call for opportunity for other people's children, we impoverish the education that they get. That's the irony. What's the way out of this? It's every time we start thinking about opportunity to try to start thinking about the opportunity to try things out, the opportunity to fail, the opportunity to figure things out on your own, the opportunity not just to move fast and move up, but to have an enriched education. Some of you in this room, I won't point at anybody because I don't know you well enough. Some of you in this room probably already suspect that you've been moved through an impoverished educational experience. That in your haste to move forward, and in the world's haste to lift you up and move you forward and get you moving fast, that something's been missing along the way. And you might know this because you've had a conversation with somebody who didn't have that experience, and you go, wait, you got to do what? In your junior year, you got to go to France? I was studying. You got to learn how to make a rocking chair? I I just had to make a picture frame. And that just meant I checked off shop class. Had to do that because I had to get back into my Avid class where I was going to learn how to take notes so that I could prove to somebody how fast and smart I was. If it's good enough, if this is good enough for my kids, then it ought to be good enough for your kids too. Unless I'm willing to say that my kids, they're smart enough. They got it together enough. They're the ones who can handle the Pink Floyd guitarist teaching them guitar. Your kids, they really just need to move forward with long division. Because they're just not ready for this kind of... Doesn't that feel ugly? It just feels crummy. But that's where it takes us. If we're going to preserve this, that for other people's kids, the criterion is the opportunity means opportunity to move forward, move fast, don't slow down, get going. The only thing left to preserve it with is that if you actually think that your own kids are better than other people's kids, that they deserve it more, and it just doesn't feel right. We're going to end with this. Don't write anything yet. I want to go to the other two errors. Error number 3. When we say opportunity, and we think about circumstances, we tend to overemphasize... The heck? This is not my phone. This is not the remote. We tend to overemphasize what an individual brings. Right? We tend to overemphasize what the individual person brings as his or her own circumstances, right? What does that mean? I'm just a picture as an illustration, right? We think about opportunity and whether or not people take an opportunity. We tend to overemphasize what an individual person brings. So you see, and you'll see this video later. I don't want to show it now because well, maybe I should, but I don't have it ready anyway. My daughter, this is Lilia, she goes up to the monkey rings, right? And she just starts trying it out. And she says, "Dad, I need some help." And I say something like, "No." Some version of that. People have seen this video and been like, "Man, who's that dad?" And I'm like, "That's me." I say something like, "Well, how did you do it that other time?" She starts going across the top like this, and she tries it, and man, she falls. She tries it again, and she starts getting this swing back and forth, and she comes down, she spits on her hands, and man, if nothing else, it's perseverance, right? If nothing else, it's perseverance. I was a proud dad, not because she went across, but because she had perseverance. We tend to overemphasize things like perseverance when we talk about opportunity. We tend to overemphasize her physical strength, right? We tend to overemphasize in school intelligence. What the hell is intelligence anyway? We tend to overemphasize what an individual person carries in their head and their heart when we talk about opportunity. It's not to say, let me say this. It's not to say, going back to our definition as a set of circumstances, it's not to say that what you bring, your brain stuff, your heart stuff, your spirit stuff, whether or not you have grit, it's not to say that that stuff doesn't matter. Of course it matters. How does it matter? It means that sometimes you can find your own opportunity. When given an opportunity, you can take advantage of it. When it starts to close in on you, you can give yourself some room. That's all important. It's just not as important as we think. I won't do it because it takes too long, but there's a really neat exercise. People have done it to talk about privilege. Put a trash can on the stage and make everybody crumple up a piece of paper and take a shot. Those of you at the back, it doesn't matter whether or not you're on UCSB's basketball team. It doesn't matter. This might be too hard for you if you're at the back. If you're at the front, you have an increased chance of making it. But it would be crazy if when you at the back didn't make it, I said to you, "Man, you need to work on that shot." That might be true. But it's at best only half the story, because the other half of the story is the other set of circumstances that you were positioned way further back. I could add circumstances like make everybody throw with their left hand. I could add constraints and rules, which starts to sound a little bit like school. But I could add layers and layers of circumstance. I could say y'all had an opportunity to make a shot. But the circumstances extend far beyond your skill or your grit, your determination, your ability. So error number 3 is when we start talking about opportunity, we tend to overemphasize what an individual person brings to a set of circumstances, and we tend to forget to analyze the actual circumstances. So if I say this, everybody has an equal chance to get into gate class at 3rd grade. If you just look at the surrounding circumstances, it's just not true. Some kids have had lots of opportunity to play with baby Einstein stuff and mess around with blocks and get them into patterns, and they're going to do better on that part of the IQ test that's going to get you into gate class. Some of you have never had a chance never had an opportunity, never had a chance or never been asked to play with blocks. I'll give you another example. It's a clear one. All of you had, when you started kindergarten, you had an equal chance to do well. You had an equal opportunity to do well. And if you don't do well, it's because you don't have the ability or the grit. Something's wrong with you. We tend to overemphasize that explanation. What is it that we fail to see? We fail to see that the minute that you walk into kindergarten, the teacher says, sit down, please, crisscross applesauce pepperoni pizza in a circle. And if you've already done that, you're going to look a little smarter. I have this amazing video. It's a classroom management video from Oakland in the 1970s. I believe it's an African-American teacher with a mixed group of kids, right? And it's all about what you should do on the first day. And there's this one kid who's wiggling all over the place. His name is Reggie. And it's all, remember, he's like, he's doing this, he's sitting around with the kids, talking to other kids, and doing this. Right? And other kids, half of those kids are sitting. Man, you see him, look at him looking around the classroom, man. Like, man, this place is crazy. Seeing all these books and bins and blocks. The teacher, right off the bat, she says, Reggie, and she puts his name on the board. On the one hand, I can go, hey, thinking about that as man, he had an equal opportunity to sit down, sure, but he was also in a set of circumstances where not sitting down mattered in a way that maybe it hadn't before. Why do we make people sit down in seats all day? We say you're a behavior problem, and we act like it's you, and we don't look at the circumstances that make the behavior that you did a problem. Is it you, or is it the circumstances? We tend to overemphasize what an individual brings and underemphasize the circumstances we put people into. What do you think? I'm three down. Thoughts, questions? Yep.
Do you think that educating everyone and letting everyone have the opportunity to make our society better in general, not economically, but just socially and
our society, did you hear the question? Giving opportunity to everyone, and when you can probably predict where I'm going to go, I'm going to say, what do you mean opportunity? Right? Does that mean opening the doors to everybody? No, I don't think that's going to do much. Making sure everybody gets universal preschool, I don't think that's going to make our society a ton better. It's maybe going to lift the floor a little bit. Why? For all the reasons that I've just outlined. One of the things we have to do is to begin to put educational opportunity in its proper place. Throwing the doors open to schools is not going to fix every societal ill. We act like it will. But if we're going to talk about school as a set of opportunities, then let's not talk about it as everybody gets the same open door. But let's talk about it as creating circumstances for everybody where everybody can do well. Not just throwing it open and saying, everybody here, you've got your chance. But rather saying, wait, if opportunity is a set of circumstances, then that means I've got to figure out what are the right circumstances for you that are going to make you smart and do well. I can create a set of circumstances where all of you look kind of dumb. All I have to do is ask you to do a long division problem and not let you use a pencil. Is it because you're dumb or because you don't get a chance to use a pencil? I had a kid, I'm teaching 5th grade, this kid was like going like this. Every time he wrote on a piece of paper, it was like, I need to erase it and it would make holes in the paper, and he was like always going like this. And finally a person who worked at the school said, have you let him chew gum? And I was like, never thought of it. She said, well, don't tell the principal, because you know we're not supposed to chew gum. He put gum in his mouth. The minute he started going like this, everything went, like what? I could say, well, that's not fair for everybody, because then it's going to be crazy. Everybody's going to have gum. There's going to be gum on the bottom of tables. Such a simple change in circumstance where suddenly he went from can't to can. I could create a sort of set of circumstances where you guys would do much more poorly on this exam than otherwise, but instead it's talk to people, use your notes. Opportunity, right, is not just throwing the doors open and saying, you're welcome to come in. Opportunity is a set of circumstances. So can we, if we're committed to opportunity, and I have suspicions about our commitment, if we're committed to opportunity, then we have to ask a question. What are the circumstances that we would build where everybody could not only progress, but also discover? I'll say that again. Rather than saying opportunity is everybody gets a scholarship, which sounds better than the alternative, which is that, you know, if you don't have the money, you're out. Let's have a more nuanced version of opportunity that says it's not just throwing the doors open, but deliberately constructing, arranging the circumstances where you can both progress and discover. That'd be different. That would be a different version of opportunity than the one we use all the time. And we wouldn't walk around saying, our efforts at opportunity didn't work because look at income inequality. Because we'd recognize that income inequality is the outcome of a lot more than educational opportunity. What are we aiming for? A more disciplined, sophisticated account of opportunity when we think about schooling. One that narrows its use to real-life circumstances, and then takes seriously the notion of circumstances. And I think that the trick, don't answer this. I think that the trick, there's a mental trick to help you get a little more sophisticated and a little more disciplined. It's a two-step trick. You ready? Step one. Think about your own child, right? And I think when you think about your own child, you would be unsatisfied if you imagined a teacher saying, well, the door's open. You would want a much more sophisticated approach to the educational circumstances for your own child. I think. And the second step is to remember, and this comes from John Rawls, a philosopher, is first think about your own child, but then remember to put on what he calls the veil of ignorance. What does that mean? Think about your own child, but remember that you don't know what your child's going to be like. A lot of times we can do the first step, I think about my own child, but then we project our own selves onto our children. I say, oh, my own child is going to love the water. Every time my own child gets in the ocean, she's going to want to run in. Imagine my dismay. Child number 1 ran right into the ocean. Child number 2 cried the whole time because she had sand on her feet. She loves the ocean now, but imagine my dismay to discover that, wait, she's not just like me?